Hey, what's going on, folks? We are live. What's going on? Once again, Josh here, 86 Boxing, just holding it down. We are going to be doing another live video stream of a historic figure in the sport of boxing, one who many of you may already know. As a matter of fact, for those that don't know, of course, that story is out there and widely available, especially even in the form of a motion picture film. But that being said, a good way to be introduced to the story is no doubt the book. So we're going to be talking about none other than the man they call the Cinderella Man himself, James J. Braddock. So that's who's going to be the subject here. Braddock, the Cinderella Man, as I know, as I always say, do come in and be sure to hit that like button. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Be sure to turn on the notifications if you haven't turned the notifications on. It is truly appreciated. I'm going to try to bring these to you on Wednesdays. Really, there's nothing stopping that process right now. So every Wednesday, I hope to come with something new that we can touch on as it pertains to boxing history and a subject or figure that is out there in that world of boxing history. Shout out to my man Dan the man there, saying get your popcorn ready. Indeed, indeed. Those are the words of Terrell Owens as well. But yes, get your popcorn ready. As I mentioned, this is going to be a very interesting one as the fighter himself is very interesting. James J. Braddock. You see in the title where I mentioned there, from government relief money to world heavyweight champion. There's been a lot of talk about sort of funding, SNAP benefits, things of that nature in the news and everything. Just showing you where people can get to with the likes of things such as the ability to be able to have food, that government relief money or whatever it may be, and how you can go from that to a world heavyweight champion, because that is exactly the case with one James J. Braddock. And we're going to talk about that in the midst of this thing. Shout out to my man Remy in there, Remy7448. He had dropped the super chat, says salute soldier in the chat, the Cinderella Man indeed there. Appreciate you there, Remy. As always, coming through, showing some love there, folks. So Remy in the mix here, dropped the super chat at that. Remy, hey, I can't thank you enough there. There to super chat, $5. They appreciate it, man. There's not a ton I can say other than true appreciation. Always dropping by, showing some love. Hey, folks, be sure to go check out Remy. Be sure to go subscribe to his channel. Great dude, always coming through, showing some love. That has been the case for a long period of time here. Hey, that's why we're all here. Show some love. We're here to talk, dialogue about some of these things happening in the sport of boxing from a historic standpoint. So, as they say, sometimes history can repeat itself, but sometimes it shows us things that we don't ultimately want to repeat, and we can take with that what we can. So appreciate you there, Remy. No doubt about it there, buddy. Salute there to Stop Motion MMA dropped in. Says salute 86. Hey, appreciate you there, Stop Motion. Salute to you as well. Keep doing your thing. Be sure to check him out as well. Folks have some content over there on this channel. Stop Motion MMA. Thanks for dropping by there. But yeah, super appreciative. We got Remy dropped a super chat, man. Hey, can't thank you enough there, Remy. Of course. Hey, gonna continue to try and bring these to you as best I can here over the course of time as it relates to these historic stories and these discussions that we can dialogue about. But James J. Braddock, former world heavyweight champion, as you all know, and really a guy with a tough career. Just a tough career. And I mean that in more ways than one. Tough for the standpoint of who he had to fight, of course, but also tough in the standpoint of the journey there and to get to where he ultimately ended up. And I think that is a marker that kind of sets him apart from the average, the typical fighter, I guess you can say. And you understand that his story in itself is one that kind of sheds light on the capabilities of any individual with the right focus, their mindset on the right things, that determination, and sometimes having that extra push to get one over the hump or where they need to be to get to that level or status of championship, the pinnacle the top, whatever you want to call it. But he is one of those stories for sure. Stop Motion MMA says James J. Braddock is one of the greatest underdogs in boxing history. No doubt about it. He is, most certainly. Dan says hello to the chat. Appreciate you there, Dan, for sure. Stop Motion says nobody had him beating Max Baer. They thought Baer was going to be a dominant champion. No doubt about it. The Livermore Larapa, of course, that's what took him over the top right there. We'll talk about it for sure. Max Baer was who he was able to win that championship from. He had to come from some humble starts and beginnings there, but representing New York there, James J. Braddock, truly an underdog career, as mentioned there by Stop Motion, truly a tough career. And he's someone who overcame. There was also injuries. He had to deal with that, injuries, and not being able to afford to get those injuries properly healed. That's always a challenge right there in itself. And also his career kind of ran parallel to the Great Depression, and we know what effect that had on him in all that were alive during that period. For the most part, many just had to deal with a lot of stuff, a lot of crap, and mostly on the negative side, a lot of financial ruin came about during that particular period there at the end of the 20s and moving forward for however long it took to recover. Some never quite recovered in the way that they were prior, or some recovered somewhat, but yeah, there were those that didn't recover as well. So a ton that went on during that period. So just think about juggling all that on top of a career, and just think about it, just setting in motion, set something in motion in terms of the thought behind you're dealing with the depression as a country, and then just even getting people out to watch these fights, purses, gates, things of that nature, the expectation, like that had to be a challenge in itself, just thinking about it from that standpoint. Will the people actually be there? Will the people show up? Do they have the ability to show up? Do they have the funding to show up? And of course, with boxing, there are always some financial backers, big money backers, and they play a role as well. So things did keep churning. That being said, certainly a difficult time there. So we're going to talk about it for sure. James J. Braddock, the Cinderella Man. And as I noted up top, there is a book, there is a movie. I've seen both. Excuse me. It took me the longest to actually watch the movie. I watched the movie within the last 3 years, I want to say. I mentioned it on a live at some point when I actually watched it. I did read the book first, and I'm happy about reading the book, certainly, and then kind of seeing the film. But I'd always heard opinions on the actual film prior to me watching the film, and the overall depiction of like Max Baer, for instance, in the film, because I learned of Max Baer, or at least I would say maybe I knew of course, James Braddock beforehand, but learning of Max Baer and knowing his story as well, of course, I get where people were coming from with the depiction or how it was displayed there. Ron Howard was the director, I believe, for the movie Cinderella Man. So I think many didn't like how he was portrayed in that particular movie. But hey, it's out there. I thought they did a good job with the character selection for sure, though. Cheers to my man, Random Acoustic Thoughts says, big up. Cheers there to you, Random. Appreciate you there, buddy. Be sure to go check out Random Acoustic Thoughts. Go follow his page, subscribe, like, all that good stuff. Great content over there. You want to talk about some of the great heavyweights to have graced us? It's going to be on there. As a matter of fact, I want to have another discussion with you there, Random, at some point coming up soon. We're going to talk about some of this stuff going on here, historically speaking, that is, because when Random and I get together, we talk boxing history. So he's in the process of writing a book on the great Sam Langford, and I so look forward to it. And hey, maybe we'll have to set up another show to come talk about progress thus far there, Random, and some of the other things going on. But we'll definitely get together there. So Random Acoustic Thoughts, folks, be sure to go check him out. If you haven't, subscribe to Random Acoustic Thoughts. But yes, we're here talking James J. Braddock. And of course, I have a depiction. And when I say his resume is crazy. That's one thing, but I can actually show you. So I'm going to pull this up and you can just look at some of the names that are there. And that gives you an understanding in itself. Joe Louis, Max Baer, Tommy Farr, Art Lasky, John Henry Lewis, Corn Griffin, Tommy Loughran. Just think of these champions that I'm calling out here. So many champions. I mean, you could go on and on. Jimmy Slattery, Pete Latzo. I mean, it's like a who's who there as far as these opponents on his resume. Now, of course, all of them weren't wins. That being said, he was in with some of these. He was in with these guys, and these are some of the absolute best the sport has seen in any form or fashion. Shout out to Mr. GG 1959. My friend Clay Moore wrote a great book on Sam Langford a number of years ago. Cheers to you, GG. Haven't seen you here before, bro. Appreciate you dropping by, showing some love. Indeed, Clay Loyal. He does have that Sam Langford book that is out there. And from all indication, it is a great one. I know Random has actually read it as well. And he's touched base with Clay. Random's book's going to focus more on the early career of Sam Langford there because, hey, that's been a great book that already has been presented. Folks, check that out if you have it. Clay Boyle's book on Sam Langford, the great Boston Bone Crusher. So we'll hope it'll be an added and welcome addition there. But Mr. G, thank you for dropping by there, buddy, and showing some love. Yeah, we appreciate it all the time. Hope to see you again here as we continue to talk boxing history. Random says, sounds good. Let's do it. We're going to do it, folks. So be on the lookout. We'll try to get something on the calendar here soon for that, as a matter of fact. But you saw that when I pulled that up. Let me pull it up again for those that may not have caught it here in terms of some of these notable fights on the resume of the Cinderella Man, JamesJBraddock. I had to take some names off, or otherwise it would have overflowed. And I was like, you know what? Let me just take some off, replace some with others, etc. You know, just that type of resume there. And he had some damn good wins when you think about that win over Max Baer, for instance, that win over John Henry Lewis. Man, I'm just telling you, it's pretty amazing. Pretty freaking amazing right there. You're talking world champions. And now, Braddock, he wasn't always a heavyweight, so he kind of worked his way up towards that. He did work his way towards those heavyweight ranks. Random says, great book, no doubt about it there, Random, no doubt about it. And JamesJBraddock, tough career, as I mentioned, had to learn the hard way in terms of getting in there in the mix and take the types of fights that, hey, they can put you at risk, of course, especially once you get to a certain point. And the financial side, you're thinking about that. The financial weighs more than, I guess, the overall game, though, in a sense, you know, if you keep winning, that doesn't matter. But the financial side, taking fights when you shouldn't have taken them, or you probably weren't necessarily ready to take them against an opponent that the expectations were high, you know. So those are kind of some of the issues and situations that JamesJBraddock ran into as he was going through his career. As mentioned, he started lower in the weight, around the light heavyweight-ish range, or even just above middleweight. So somewhere in that area for the most part. Yeah, looking at his weight here, he did. So his lowest weight I can see recorded is about 162. I think I saw 162 there somewhere, or did I? 163 at least, but I think I thought I saw 162. Yeah, so he has had a 162. Just looking at what it was saying on BoxRec, just think about that. So let's think about a guy that's essentially like a guy going from middleweight to heavyweight, essentially, and we have seen that on different occasions. But the levels of success for it, they can vary. But that being said, we have seen that you don't see it as much these days, and it seems to be a far cry. As far as these days, but when you think about, say, for instance, Mickey Walker did a live on him not too long ago. He's a guy who was a welterweight, went up there to heavyweight, who's legitimately fighting heavyweights. You think about who else? Some others that were in the mix there. Here, modern times, Roy Jones, he did it, but it was more common back then. You think about Harry Greb. He was middleweight, went to heavyweight, fought some heavyweights, and some of these guys, they could have won a world title as well. Of course, with Roy Jones, he was in the 4-belt era, so he was able to he was able to beat a champion with one of the belts, at least in Jared Ruiz. And just think about some of these other guys. Yeah, they had potential there, but really you had only one champion. And if you didn't get that champion, then of course you couldn't get a shot at that title, or it wasn't a title shot. So that could factor in. But like I said, there's still others who rose up there. Think about Sam Langford, who we were talking about. He started down there, I guess, in the amateur side, that lightweight range or somewhere, maybe even below it. And look what he was able to do, rising up to heavyweight, knocking out heavyweights. Break real quick. Mr. G says, Clay even interviewed some of the surviving family members when he went on a trip to Nova Scotia. Awesome. That's pretty dope right there, being able to interview family. That's good. A lot of research went into that. A lot of that is damn good right there, Mr. G. I think that adds to it right there. Remy says, not a bad resume. Not at all there, Remy. Not at all there, buddy. Braddock was a better fighter at light heavyweight despite never winning the 175 crown, says Mr. G. Indeed there. He was top notch, and that was probably where he was more suited. And I see you mentioned the great Ezzard Charles. Ezzard Charles, another one of the, yes, he was probably a better light heavyweight. Even middleweight, he was top tier. He was damn good at middleweight as well. But yeah, light heavyweight, worthy of the title. Had he gotten a shot, he would have likely won it, and he would have had a reign there. But he had to go up to heavyweight to finally get that shot. I guess you can say it was a similar case for Braddock in some sense. His glory came at heavyweight, but light heavyweight would have been better. He did run into Tommy Loughran. That kind of was a setback, I suppose. But Tommy Loughran, one of the all-time greats there, one of the greatest light heavyweights in boxing history. He ranks up there among the 2, 3, 4, 5 best, if you ask me. And he's on that resume of Braddock right there. But these are the type of individuals you had to run into back then. Remy mentions Braddock and Marciano had to learn how to punch on the job, from what I've read. But coloring books aren't as factual, LOL. Gotcha there. Yeah, hey. Sometimes that came about, as a matter of fact, and it talks about it in the book where JamesJBraddock, when he hurt one of his hands, I believe it's the right hand, if I'm not mistaken, at one point he ultimately couldn't afford to get it healed, or the doctor in itself couldn't afford for the doctor to come in and do surgery or whatever it may be. So he had to further kind of break it or reset it in some sense on his own. Then he let it kind of just heal on its own. He even fought a few times while it was still messed up. And of course, that probably did him no real favor, but eventually he started to heal. And once it got back right, he was even stronger from his own feeling, at least. It was stronger than it had ever been. And that helped him there in that second run, that led him to, of course, winning the heavyweight title right there. So yeah, hey, some of that stuff happens like that, And then yeah, Marciano, hey, beast right there, just a machine. The way he trained everything, crazy. So Mr. G says Sam started at featherweight. So featherweight, just think about that. That is absolutely insane right there. Featherweight. Then just to think of him rising up to fight heavyweights and actually legitimately knock out heavyweights. So the two greatest fighters of all time, of course, Sugar Ray Robinson is thrown in there, but Sam Langford, Harry Grab, those are two. And man, you can't go wrong with either of them. Big separator for Langford is he had legitimate power and he could knock out legitimate heavyweights, etc., as he rose up the ranks, which is pretty amazing, especially him starting at featherweight. I was having that conversation with someone, and I was trying to figure out when he turned pro where he was at, if it was lightweight. And I'm guessing Mr. G, featherweight. I know I've had this discussion with Random, but I seem to always get kind of hung up now that I think back on it, on where Sam started out from a pro perspective weight-wise, because, of course, we know where he finished. But that being said, very capable of winning the title at any weight. And it's amazing because Sam Langford actually fought Joe Gans. Just think about that. Fought Joe Gans, and Joe Gans is one of the great light heavyweight or great lightweights in boxing history. My number one, but you can't go wrong with Benny Leonard either. And there's some others that are thrown in there, but just think about that. Sam Linker fought him, and he could have fought Jack Dempsey, for instance, or something like that. But he fought some of the other great heavyweights, Jack Johnson, Sam McVeigh, Joe Jeanette. Just think about that, and just the scale of the size of those men right there. That's crazy, right? When you think about it, Mr. G says Charles owned Archie Moore and Joey Maxim, who were champions in his era. Yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. Yeah, it got the better of Archie Moore. I have a video on the channel on Violent El Murray, and he actually is someone who Ezzard Charles fought as well. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, and Ezzard Charles beat him. Big puncher. Charlie Burley, I'm pretty sure that's another one. I have a video on the channel on Charlie. I'm trying to think right here because I know there was a series of fight. Moore fought Charlie as well. This is in a middleweight rank. So, yeah, just think about that. Some pretty amazing stuff overall. Stop Motion says divisions used to get held up due to wars because the champions were drafted. For years, there were no title fights. Oh, yeah, I know that factored in as well. Yeah, wars. Just think about that. Yeah, that can certainly stronghold some things for the most part. And yeah, I've heard of situations that pertain to fighters actually having to run into those types of issues there with the war coming into place and all of that stuff. And then, of course, we know the stories of those who served in war, whatever capacity it may have been. It could have been like a Joe Louis situation where they're just kind of there training, teaching different things. And then some of those that might have been out there, Barney Roth, for instance, heard that he was out there, got a Silver Star or something of that nature. But, combat, you're actually seeing it, being involved with that stuff. So crazy, but yeah, that sort of real life, the world in itself kind of factors in as well. Cheers to Just Do Boxing says, peace, my guy. I'm still live. Just stopping through to show some love. I appreciate you there. Just Do. Hey, anytime. Be sure to go check him out, folks. Just Do Boxing right there. He's got some good content over there on the channel where he talks to a lot of different boxers who are active there, modern and all that stuff, and shares his opinions, comments, etc. So be sure to go check out Just Do Boxing. Thanks for dropping by there. Remy says Charles and Joe Louis got done dirty when given weeks to train and recover from their previous fights before facing Rocky. Oh, yeah, I imagine that could certainly factor into some things there. Certainly that could. Yeah, and oh, yeah, that's tough. Hey, Rocky's a tough cookie to deal with from an overall standpoint, definitely, because you're going to get a hurting that drive and determination. And Charles actually split his nose in one of those fights, right? And still kept coming. Still. So, yeah, hey, sometimes timing can be everything. But that being said, yeah, it's just tough to deal with for sure. A tough individual to deal with there, as you mentioned, Remy. Stop Much said, I heard Charles got robbed in the first fight with Rocky, but since a lot of the rounds are lost, we will never know who really won the fight. Hey, that could be the case. I can't say for certain, but that could be the case. I know there's a guy by the name of, what is his name? His face is in my mind. I forget his name, dang it. But he's someone that Rocky fought, and he's an older guy. He was interviewed here in the 2010s, maybe, and he was adamant that he beat Rocky. This is in a fight. I don't know if it was actually televised, but I can't think of his name right now. I would have to look at Rocky's resume, but maybe that's for another video right there. But yeah, I think it's like Tiger or something maybe in there. But it's a guy. I'm sure some of you probably know who I'm talking about. I just can't think of his name. But that's one where he said that he got the better of him, but he lost it on the cars. I don't know. It's pretty crazy. So, yeah, one of those things that you just never know right there. It's good to have video and such, but yeah, it can be tricky. I don't know. It could be pretty tricky. You never know. Oh, yeah, Tiger Ted Larry. There you go, Mr. G. Mr. G. Hey, that's what I'm talking about, Mr. G. He's got it down. Tiger Ted Laurie. Yeah, so there's a video out there. There's some video on YouTube of him being interviewed. And yeah, like I said, it was in this day and age, at least he was older or whatever. I think he's passed away now. But he was speaking on that, and he seemed pretty adamant and spoke confidently that he beat Rocky Marciano. So look that up, folks. Tiger Ted Laurie. Thank you there, Mr. G, dropping that knowledge right there. So, hey, you never know. Sometimes, I mean, we see some stuff here today where we see some decisions that not all of us agree with. And we've got more technology now than they had back then. And we still don't agree with it. Even when they use the little AI punch counter, punch bot or whatever to score fights, even that little AI thing, sometimes it's a little iffy. I don't know, you know. So hey, challenging thing right there. Random says Sam used to say he started at feather, but his amateur debut at the Roanoke Club was at 135. Okay, got you there, Random. Good stuff there. Got you there. Thanks for sharing that. I was wondering about that, but yeah. So all right, hey, low out there. Just imagine Terrence Crawford, for instance, going up to heavyweight. Now he looked good there at 168 pounds, but Crawford versus Usyk. What do you think? That'd be crazy. Crazy to kind of think of right now, right? That's what it'd be like with Langford. Mr. G said Rocky had Freddie Brown and Whitey Bernstein in this corner to stem the flow of blood. Okay. Oh, Whitey. Good stuff there. Stopmo said, or Ribby said, Charles is giving contact where he had a choice of making millions and fight after a month or so after his last fight. It's documented. Okay, got you there. Remy. Hey, that's good to know right there. I think that type of stuff certainly factors in. Random says Jay Nelson won at 125, Langford at 135, and Johnson at 145. Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy right there. Random, thanks for sharing that. Random, my man, Random right there, dropping some little stats in there, or some info. That's good to know. 135. Jack Johnson at 145 as well. Okay, so that shows you, hey, the kind of weights he was scaling there. That's crazy. And we know we never got to see that second fight with Jack Johnson and Sam Langford. That would have been a interesting fight, a hell of a fight. Probably should have happened. Matter of fact, it was going to happen. The funding was there, the venue, everything was set, but it didn't happen. Of course, not because of Sam Langford, because of Jack Johnson in this case there. So interesting stuff for sure. Mr. G says Norton versus Ali, 2 and 3 were both bad decisions as well. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know. Yeah. Oh no, that's one of the things. Not the famous Jack Johnson. Okay, there, Random. Okay, this is another Johnson. All right. But that is a pretty common written name right there for sure. Dan said there wasn't any controversy with Edson versus Marciano. Only noteworthy was it was only one to go to 25 rounds with Marciano in a rematch. Marciano beat him up bad. Charles was never much after that. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's tough right there. 25 rounds, just thinking about that. Johnson didn't want to lose that title, says Blake Gallimore. Oh, no, he didn't. Cheers there to you, Blake. Thanks for dropping by, buddy. Yeah, he did not want to lose that title. He knew what the deal was. He would have certainly, I think, lost it had he fought all of those top guys that he kind of shut out there. One of them would have got him, I'm sure of it, whether that's Langford, McVeigh, Jeanette. One of those three, I think, would have got him at some point. And then if he'd have held on to it long enough, Harry Wills for sure. Johnny Johnson of Baltimore. Okay, got you there, Random. Johnny Johnson. Shout out to Johnny Johnson, folks. Probably doesn't get mentioned much these days, but hey, that's what's up, Random. Got to show everybody some love. Langford fought this Johnson too. Okay, good stuff there. Good stuff. So, all right, yeah. Hey, thanks for sharing that, folks. But yeah, we're here. Thank you for all that are in here right now. We're talking James J. Braddock. They kind of led us down another kind of rabbit hole as well, but it's like that sometimes. We're talking James J. Braddock, one of the greats to have laced them up, a true warrior of the sport. I'm going to bring this back up again for you folks so you can see for yourself some of these notable names on the resume, and you'll see some names that may have fought some of the names that we were just talking about there, you know what I'm saying? Or they at least wanted to in some capacity. But with that being said, just look at the resume of one James J. Braddock. So I often say that all wins and losses are not created equal, and that's certainly what I mean, or at least James Braddock is certainly one who kind of leans towards that thought. all wins and losses are not created equal, because he had a tough resume, as mentioned. And I think that type of stuff factors in when you're thinking about some of these fighters and even their accomplishments or lack thereof in some case, because there are plenty, as we know, of fighters that never got a shot at a world title, but they beat individuals that were world champions, some of the best the sport has seen, etc. So all those wins, all those losses aren't necessarily created equal or on equal footing. You know, there's certain things that go into them. Each individual fight has to be looked at on its own, as does each individual career. And in some of these cases, you can't just skim through a career and make judgment off of a fighter. You really have to understand what went into it. Braddock is one of those individuals there. If you look at his resume, those 24 losses there up front, then you might just write him off as a run-of-the-mill type fighter. If you didn't know anything about his status, you probably would assume that he wasn't a champion. But that's where some of that sort of research and diving further into the career of an individual comes into play. Dan mentioned Norton v. Ali all 3 times, especially the third fight. Really bad decision against Norton. That's unfortunate. You know, we do see a number of those even to this day. Stop Motion says, I think Johnson always had Langford's number, even if he didn't want to fight him again. Got you there, Stop Motion. That could very well be the case. I know Random and I have had discussions specifically centered on that, if I'm not mistaken. And I was leaning in the direction of Johnson for sure. But that being said, yeah, of course, Langford, handful for sure. But yeah, it's not guaranteed that even at that second fight with a more established heavyweight Langford, that it was a sure shot he was beating Jack Johnson, though many, I'd imagine, would favor him, but that's a good point. Mr. G says, Rolling with Stars, I had 2 fights with Marciano as well, and the first one was a close decision. Oh, yeah. They had something to do with that little scoring system that they had. It was like an interesting form of scoring. I forget exactly how it went. I believe the referee was involved and then maybe 2 others, but it was like single-digit type number scoring or something of that nature. I forget exactly how it is. Someone may know what I'm talking about, but I know they scored things differently in different locations, depending on the time frame at least. But I remember there was something with that. Braddock fought some dudes, says Random Acoustic Thoughts. No doubt about it. No doubt about it there. Rosenblum, Lockman, and Lewis, all of my top 20 all-time greats. No doubt about it. Maxie Rosenblum, Slapsy Maxie, world light heavyweight champion right there. That's on the resume. Tommy Loughran, Joe Louis. I mean, these are types of individuals that James J. Braddock was in with. I remember reading through the book. They're speaking of that Loughran fight, and that was a tough one to deal with. To deal with a guy like Tommy Loughran, especially you're trying to elevate and move to that next step. I can't remember the particulars leading up to that fight, but I know that it was one that, of course, regardless of the situation or him stepping in with Loughran at any point, certainly that's a tough fight to win right there, because Loughran, with his style, of course, he had those long arms, and he keep that left out there. Great jabber, great with timing and all of that stuff. He's going to be a tough fighter to deal with, just regardless of the situation, you know. And yeah, man, he's someone, probably doesn't get as much love as he could get here when you think about the great light heavyweights. He fought at heavyweight and all that stuff, but Tommy Loughran will mostly consider him a light heavyweight. One of the greats. You name a light heavyweight, he can match up with them, regardless of who it is, whether that's Gene Tunney, John Henry Lewis, freaking even here in modern times, Michael Spinks, Matthew Saad Muhammad, you name it. Tommy Loughran, he was a special fighter. Crazy resume as well there, just thinking about it from an overall standpoint. Mr. G says Joe Louis was the only boxer to knock Braddock down, and it was Braddock's final fight. So, yeah, that was a tough one right there. He caught Lewis on that upward trajectory right there. That was a tough one right there. And, hey, the way it went down, we have that out there on footage, folks. If you haven't seen it, it is out there. It's out there on YouTube, as a matter of fact. You can search that fight there, and you'll see Braddock was tough. Certainly tough, but man, yeah, Lewis on that trajectory that he's on, he was on at that time, yeah, he was just going to be tough to deal with just in general, man, because, hey, he's Joe Louis, arguably the greatest heavyweight that ever lived, you know. I mean, you can't go wrong with Joe Louis there. Dan mentions Marciano beat La Starza, but in New York, La Starza's hometown. Some said it was closer than what Marciano destroyed, and then Marciano destroyed him in a rematch. Oh, yeah, Roland La Starza. Yeah, I know he was undefeated at that time. Random says, my favorite combo that Louis KO of Braddock, poetry and motion, punched his guard away to launch a huge shot. Perfect timing. Oh, yeah, definitely. Hey, man, yeah, Braddock, hey, took that, went down. And, man, yeah, Joe Louis, something else, especially with those short hooks on the inside. Louis stoppage I like, the knockout, I guess you can say, was that one he got on, he was a little bit older, but he got it on Jersey Joe Walcott. Walcott thought he had him, may have been a little overzealous. Then Louis just caught him with those short hooks and dropped him. That's another one, man. Joe Louis, thing of beauty right there. Shout out to Scrapbook Boxing. He does a good job of explaining that style of Joe Louis and how he gets off those punches, how he keeps that foot out there so he stays on the proper line when he's there. Then he gets in range. Those short hooks, man, those short ones are tough to deal with. Remy says it's documented Dan Baraki wasn't the shady one coming up with those contacts versus Joe and Charles. Oh, contracts. Oh, yeah, gotcha. It wasn't Rocky. In fact, they're Braddock. But yeah, when their Ring Magazine said following the Ali fight with Jimmy Young, if this had been a fight between the man in black trunks and the man in white trunks, the man in black trunks won. But gotcha. Hey, you know, sometimes, yeah, sometimes these things are definitely questionable. Definitely questionable. And you know, that talk you hear of A side, B side. Does it affect the judges? Does it affect the scoring? Does it sway? Does the cheering sometimes sway someone to hold favor of the fighter being cheered for? You know, those are very much real things that come about there. Eudes, salute there to you, good people of 86 Day. Appreciate you there. Eudes Fernandez, he's in the mix here. Appreciate you there. Always great to have you in the mix there, buddy. Chatting. We're here talking some boxing history. We're going to try to keep this thing going. We're talking JamesJBraddock, folks. Oh, yeah, while you're here, folks, be sure to like, subscribe, turn on those notifications, whatever it may be. It's appreciated. Trying to make some waves here, trying to do some things there. So, hey, give me a like. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed, but I'm guessing all of you probably subscribed there. So, hey, much love to you there. The man in the white trucks was Muhammad Ali. Got you there, Mr. G. Yeah. Figure. Random says, Tommy Loughlin's resume is stunning. Absolutely. You said book, and I got new glasses. Recommend some good boxing books you have read. So the JamesJBraddock, Cinderella Man, that book, that might have been the one I read, might have been Jeremy Schaap. I think Jeremy Schaap, his father was a interviewer, commentator, sports journalism figure. I believe it was Jeremy Schaap who did that. So that's one there, Eunice. I have a ton over here, but Mark Allen Baker, he did one recently on Jack Dillon. That's worth checking out there. That's the one worth checking out. The biography of a giant slayer, Jack Dillon. He is one of the more underrated fighters in history who isn't often talked about. He was another one of those guys who was like, he could really could have dominated continually at middleweight, but he moved up. So he ended up fighting up at heavyweight. He came just before Dempsey's rise as far as when Dillon was at his best. And he was a very interesting personality as well, more introverted. So Mark does a good job of diving into kind of the mind of Jack Dillon and some of the things that he dealt with and went through as a fighter there in the mix. One of those things was for sure just he was introverted. He didn't like to share much about his life and what was happening at that particular time, but he certainly did. He certainly was one hell of a fighter and had the makings of someone who could be super dominant with the right sort of schedule things going for him. He had a ton of fights. One of those guys, I forget, he might have had 200 and something fights. I'm pretty sure it was somewhere in that range. And man, he was fighting, I guess you could argue, too often in some cases right there. So his high was a high, but once he moved past his prime, man, he was still fighting often, and they could pick up some wins, but he was losing to some individuals that he would have destroyed prior. And I think that's the story of a lot of fighters in some situations right there. So I recommend that one right there. The book on Max Baer, The Magnificent Max Baer. So Colleen Aycock and the person that she tends to write her books with. That's another one there. Get us. Of course, we talked about that Clay Moyle book, Sam Langford there. I still need to read that with myself there, folks, must admit. So that's one to check it out. But I've heard nothing but great things about it there, Eudice. So that's one to check out for sure. So be sure to check those out there, buddy. Hey, shout out to my man Remy that dropped super chat in there. Says, once again, you and the whole chat are bringing interesting comments and facts. Best chat. Hey, appreciate you there. Appreciate you there, Remy, my man right there. Remy, hold it down, man. Hey, I can't thank you enough there, buddy. Hey, appreciate the love there. Let me give you a Remy, it is appreciated. With that super chat, drop dialogue in chat with everyone here as we talk boxing history and all that stuff, because we get a lot of boxing content that is out there, but sometimes we don't dive into the history as much. And there's some very interesting stories when you look back on some of these individuals there. So appreciate you there, Remy. Mr. G says, I know all about the rematch. Hey, shout out to Rodolfo Rivera Jr. in the mix there. Appreciate you there, Rodolfo. Hey, thanks for dropping by there, buddy. Hey, glad to have you here in the mix. We'll chat for sure. Then you said no controversy in the Charles Marciano fights. Yeah, no controversy. Hey, yeah, may have been, like I said. Braddock's win over Art Lasky was impressive. Oh, yeah, that's another good one. Art Lasky, yeah, his name was there on the resume. Another good win there for James J. Braddock. And he came through at points in situations where, hey, it might not have been expected. But in going through the book, you'll see that early on, Braddock, he had pretty solid backing. His trajectory was aiming and pushing towards him excelling well in the sport. Then he had those setbacks with the injuries, etc. Then he piled up some losses or whatever, and then people kind of fell out or may not have viewed him in that same light. But that being said, it was understood that he was a talented boxer, and he at one point was held in pretty high regard as he was on his rise there. So he did have some pretty solid wins as he was going through that process there. Let me pull that up again real quick for folks to see some of these names on here. Joe Lewis, Tommy Farr. How tough is Tommy Farr, folks? John Henry Lewis, Tommy Loughran, Al Gaynor, Ernie Schaff. Oh, let me see. Let me move that real quick. Hold up. I got that in there. Can't see. Well, that bottom name is Pete Latzo. Pete Latzo, another damn good fighter right there. Max Baer, Art Lasky, just mentioned, Corin Griffin, Les Kennedy, tough contender right there. Les Kennedy at heavyweight. Maxie Rosenblum, we mentioned there. Hold on, let me do that again. Maxie Rosenblum, Babe Hunt, man, he had a decent amount of fight. Very good fighter right there, Babe Hunt. I want to actually dive more into Babe Hunt. If you look at his resume, he was a damn good fighter. I believe he fought for a world title. Don't quote me on it. I gotta think back because there have been some other babes in boxing. No pun intended. But that being said, another one, Jimmy Slattery right there. Everybody knows Jimmy Slattery. Great light heavyweight right there. We're talking world champions that James J. Braddock was in there mixing it up with, folks. So that tells you a little bit of something right there. He was a hell of a fighter there. Random said, sorry, reported Blackburn would say Lewis was a combo of Gans, Barbados Walcott, and Langford. Insane. Lewis food used the old school stance. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's amazing right there. Think about that. Joe Gans, Barbados Joe Walcott, Sam Langford being wrapped into one to get one Joe Louis. That's coming from Jack Blackburn, who was in with the best of the best and trained Joe Louis. Now, that's one hell of a nod right there, to say the least. Right there. Thanks for sharing that, Random. I think that speaks volume. So there's a video on each of those individuals on the channel. So check out Jack Blackburn if you don't know him. Hell of a fighter right there. One of the great trainers. And they fought some of the best of the best. I mean, even Harry Greb. He freaking fought Harry Greb. Just think about that. And he was of the era, mainly, I guess you can say, the era of Joe Genge, Roberto's Joe Walcott, you know, but he fought Harry Greb, Sam Langford. I mean, Jack Blackburn, hell of a fighter right there, man. Check him out. Lewis did use the old school stance, says Random. Oh, yeah, and I think that's what certainly puts those nods there. Thanks once again there, Remy. Random says Jack Dillon, another great in a great era. No doubt about it. Jack Dillon had another amazing resume, and that's one of the things that you'll see in the book that I was mentioning there. And Mark Allen Baker, he dives into all of those fights. You'll just see he was in there taking on guys like George Chipp, world middleweight champion, but Jack Dillon had his number. I mean, it was practically easy work. Not that it was just super easy for him, but he'd get multiple wins over George Chipp, for instance. It's in there, Tommy Loughran. I mean, not Tommy Loughran, but Leo Hook. That's what I was trying to think of. So that's another one right there. You're talking about Jack Dillon in there in the mix with. I mean, hell of a fighter. Then he moved on. He would go on to heavyweight to fight some guys like I believe he was in there with Bill Brennan, for instance. And we know Brennan was in with some top-notch names there at heavyweight. So Jack Dillon, man, hell of a fighter. And he was only about 5'7"-ish, somewhere in there, 5'7", maybe 5'7", 5'8"-ish. But I think more in that 5'7" range. But he could stop these heavyweights. He could stop guys, tough and rugged style. There's no video of him, unfortunately. But when I think about him, and I think about sort of his makeup and tenacity, I think about Mickey Walker. Their fighting style may not have been exactly the same, but that being said, Mark Allen Baker does a good job of explaining it. It was less about the finesse aspect of it, and more so about just his kind of bullish nature in which he went in and laid into these individuals offensively. So you think about the likes of Toy Bulldog Mickey Walker. He got a bullish nature to him when he was in the mix there fighting. Shout out to my man Ernest says, what up? Hey, appreciate you there, Ernest. Be sure to go check him out there, folks. Pagan Love Podcast. Be sure to go check him out. Subscribe to his channel. We'll be on talking boxing and other stuff from a modern perspective on Sunday nights as well. Hey, in interviews that pop about. So appreciate you dropping by there, buddy. We got Mr. G says Boxing Babylon is a great book, no longer in print if you can find it, by former editor of Ring Magazine, Nigel Collins. Okay, Nigel. I ran into Nigel at a event a number of years back, as a matter of fact. Oh, Nigel. Shout out to Nigel Collins, journalist, writer right there. Yeah, he has written a good deal of things. So I didn't know of that one there, Mr. G. I'm going to look into it as well. Boxing Babylon. The name is pretty dope. Dan says, Remy, wasn't any. I've never heard good that Edward went full 15. Only want to go 15 when Rocky was champ, but no controversy. Rocky beat him solid. Then, of course, KO in the rematch. No trend among the greats. Okay, good to go. Yeah, so 15 rounders. All right. Jack the Giant Slayer there. Blake Gallimore mentioned. Yes. So check that book out, folks. I do have it over here somewhere. Whoa, I only typed the chat once at the end. Got you there. I saw that. Really, chat. That's what he said in there. Oh, look. Mr. G, in those days, you had to fight to keep food on the table, no doubt about it. And that's one of the things that JamesJBraddock did. He fought to keep food on the table. So he took some fights he probably shouldn't have taken at the time that he took them. And he was injured in the midst of such. So those are the things you have to think about. Udis says, thanks for sharing. I'll get them. No doubt about it there. Udis. Yo, thank you there, buddy. Random says, Slattery, another great fighter. No doubt about it. Solid boxer right there. And a New York fighter, Buffalo, as a matter of fact. So Jimmy Slattery. And, yeah, he's a damn good boxer, world light heavyweight champion. I've worked with someone. I shared this story before, but I worked with someone with the last name Slattery previously. He didn't know of any connection, but I feel like there might have been a connection there. I can't remember where he was from, but I feel like he was from somewhere in the Northeast. And Slattery, Buffalo. I know he wasn't from Buffalo, and he wasn't from New York. But that being said, Slattery, I feel like there might have been a connection somewhere down the line there, even though he may not have knew of the fighting Jimmy Slattery. Random says Slats was legit as F. Yep, he was, no doubt about it. Oh, look, what are you talking about there? Fake love? Oh, I think I know. Tommy Lockridge fought everyone. I never realized that he fought Braddock. A lot of those names grabbed resume also. Yes, indeed, there. Blake Gallimore showing love there. Yes, hey, like on Grabb's resume for sure. Yeah, Tommy Lockridge, hell of a fighter right there. Just thinking the two lock and get up right there. Man, legitimately in there running is greatest light heavyweight of all time. Of course, light heavyweight is a stacked, deep division. So you'll have favorites that pop up and all that stuff, but hey, he could run with the best of them. He could probably match up and beat the best of them on any given night. And that's what you tend to look towards, when we think about who's the greatest or the best that did this, that, whatnot. Hey, any given night can change the outcome right there. So, like I said, all wins and losses aren't created equal. I'm sure there's some light heavyweights out there with some pretty fancy, glammy records. But that being said, they probably couldn't hold a candle to a Tommy Lockridge or JamesJBraddock or whatever, because they just don't have that type of fight resume. They didn't have that type of that type of schedule that they were dealing with, and they didn't go through those types of fights and fighters that they were dealing with. So, yeah, hey, Tommy Lockridge, one of the best right there. And to think that, hey, like I said, a lot of these guys, they didn't just stay there. They moved up, and they continued to move up. So, of course, back then, when you were making that jump from heavy to heavyweight, you didn't get a cruiserweight in between. So you were going from 175 to, hey, you're in there with the heavyweights. And it is what it is. And that's the way it went for them back then. So that's another thing to take into account. Then Remy mentioned Dan correct. Only controversy is negotiations before the fight. Charles and Joe were given a month between fights before facing Marciano. All right, yeah, something to that there. Something to there, I would say there, Ribby. Good stuff right there. Something to it. Mr. G. Braddock had Doc Robb and Ray Arcel in his corner. Ray Arcel, the great Ray Arcel. I know he shared some thoughts on some greats that people have shared at different points. I don't recall all of them, but he might have been the one who held, if I'm not mistaken, Roberto Duran in high regards, or in comparison with the likes of Benny Leonard and such. People may know of that particular quote or something like that he had like that. Ray Arcel. And man, yeah, I've seen some video footage, him interviewing all that stuff when he was older. Things that it's just crazy. Some great minds there in the sport. Random says, yeah, Blake Lockridge's year-to-year record was great too. Would have been even better, but he looks to have part of his light heavyweight chase to chase the heavyweight crown. Yep, that was the case. We saw that with Billy Conn as well when he made that move to heavyweight, essentially vacated. But hey, he almost was there too. Remy says, always learn something new when you do these live. Dan reminded me of the Charles KO facing Rocky in the rematch. Oh, yes, indeed. Yeah, he handled him. No, good stuff there, Remy. Hey, same here. I've learned a ton myself there when I go to the mix. Dan Mitchell, thank you, Remy. We got a wealth of knowledge on this show. Really impressive, everyone. Indeed. It's definitely great to chat and dialogue with all, because I think you learn some things. I learned some things because, hey, I don't know everything, just like I know all of us don't know everything. But when we share these different stories, start to piece different things together, and you start to realize that then it like triggers and touches on other points like, oh, and it may have you thinking of other fighters who have some form of a connection, because a lot of these fighters are connected in some form of fashion. Blake says, Random, it's great to chat with other boxing historians with great knowledge. You and Joshua have definitely done homework. Oh, thanks there, Blake. Hey, no, appreciate you there, buddy. I saw you chatting as well. Speaking about Grab on the show with the individual that you were on with there, Blake. I know you know your stuff there. Hey, there are a ton of people in here who know their stuff, know how it goes down. They're just steadily kind of looking into and reading up on some of these boxers. Hey, you'll see sometimes some interesting things are revealed. Dan mentions Marciano not only undefeated, but really pulverized everyone he fought. None ever fought again or weren't effective. He hurt people. No doubt about it. He had a crazy training routine that I think helped to lend to that. And man, that iron will right there, that heart, that thing on the inside, that determination. Perfect example, perfect and shining example of that, where someone who, man, you'd have to hit him with everything and he would still come. So he was willing to let it all go right there in the ring. And you have to be willing to do the same to be able to try and get through a fighter like him. And even if you want to do so, sometimes your body just does not let you. Your mind might want you to, but your body does not let you. So it gets pretty tough. Remy said, Daniel, welcome, bro. Great knowledge here. Yeah, 86, great chat and chat. Hey, appreciate you there, buddy. It's always good. Be great to interview some of the people connected to these people. Oh, yes, indeed. There's no doubt. There's some out there still for different fighters. I get people who drop by the channel on varying occasions who mentioned that they're a family member of said fighters. And some of them that may drop by, they say that. And then if I reply back, I don't get anything. But some they do. Archie Moore, he has a daughter who is out here on YouTube, which is pretty cool. Of course, Archie, one of the greats, another light heavyweight great right there, though he did fight outside of light heavyweight. But when you think about the greatest light heavyweights up there, maybe number one, even for me right there. But yeah, so many of them are great. But yeah, others, I know Joe Gans, he has family members that are here in the Baltimore area that are out there. That'll be good to chat with, but I've chatted with some others who are involved and know them. Have an interview on the channel with Sarah Artist, and she's speaking on Joe Gans, some of that family lineage there. She has a good connection to it, and they're still working things out in that regard. Mr. G says, I think Ezzard Charles is the best light heavyweight despite never winning the title. Hey, got you there, Mr. G. Hey, he's definitely worthy of the billing there for sure. Definitely. I think, yeah, there's so many underrated fighters. I feel like I could say that about so many fighters that I often don't get to really, or it's hard to, settle on one in particular. But yeah, I think he's one of the most underrated fighters in general when you think about it, historically speaking, up to now, man. Ezzard Charles, the Cincinnati Cobra, one hell of a fighter. He was great in each weight that he was in. Just think about that. So you had some of these guys, they would have been multi-weight champions. He's exactly that. They were great in all of the weights that they took place in or that they fought in. And then you think about those in-between weights that we didn't have at the time that they were fighting, just think about Charles at 168 or something like that, or yeah, it would just be a game changer. I mean, hell of a fighter. And we have some footage out here, decent amount relative to others of these individuals, so you can see them applying their trade against top level competition. Man, it's just different. But Ezzard Charles, hey, worthy of that billing, Mr. G. Can't argue against it whatsoever. Remy says Leon Muhammad will come chat with you, 86. All right, salute there, Remy. Okay, Leon, y'all seen him over there chatting with Bruce Gass and such, So that's what's up there. Hey, might have to set something up at some point. But no, good night right there, Remy. Mr. D said Ray Artel trained both Benny Leonard and Roberto Duran, intended to favor Duran. Okay, that's what it is there, Mr. G. Yeah. So thanks for sharing that. So I'm telling you, we share some great stuff here on the channel in the chat. We're having the discussions. But yeah, I knew there was something to that tune right there where he was referencing both. So those are high nods right there, So a lot of people, they view Roberto Duran as the greatest light heavyweight of all time there. And hey, if Roy Arcel holds him in that favor, then that's saying something right there. I like Gans, I like Leonard, Ike Williams, Duran, all of them, man. All of them, they amazing fighters right there. So can't go wrong. Any given day, any given night, as they say. You never know. Edge was incredible, says random. Yes, he was. Yes, he was. Ezzard Charles. Yeah, I wanted to do a video on him, specifically diving into his career, but I haven't. But the video I do have on there on the channel that I think is worth watching is it's on Violent El Murray. If you look that up on the channel, or 86 Boxing, El Murray, Violent El Murray, Bearcat Ray, then I do speak to him and Ezzard Charles and he fought Edric Charles, I believe, after, I don't know if after or before that Sam Burundi fight where Burundi died, and Edric, he was gonna not fight again, but he ultimately ended up, he kept on fighting or whatever. So, hey, Edric Charles, amazing career. I want to do more on him. Hey, and it's all, hey, maybe we have a live just kind of discussing his career at some point. I would need to brush up on some things for sure because I haven't done a dive on him. But Edric Charles, hell of a fighter, man. Hell of a fighter, underrated. Edric Charles, great heavyweight too. 8 successful title defenses as heavyweight champion in a great era. Yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt. That's good stuff there, Dan. Blake Gallimore, Edric Charles, top 10 all time. Certainly worthy of that billing there, Blake. Certainly worthy. Mr. G agrees. Hey, I'm in agreement. Worthy of that billing. Hell of a fighter there. A hell of a fighter. He was a part of Black Murderers Road there, but he would eventually go on to get a title. So he fought some of those guys who are just tough, who don't get mentioned these days as much as well. They were a part of that Black Murderers Road there in the mix. I would have to look back to see who all he went up against, but pretty sure Charlie Burley was one of them. As mentioned, I have a Burley video on the channel. One of my favorites out of that bunch right there. Probably the favorite. But man, Edric Charles, hell of a fighter. People know him as the heavyweight as well, you know. That's what people mostly, I think, from a casual perspective, people know Edric Charles, the heavyweight, but amazing at the lower weights. Agree with you, Dan. Edric, middleweight, light heavyweight, and heavyweight, totally great. No doubt about it. Bruce Gas. Oh, yeah, I got you there, Remy. Yeah, I'm going to have to check it out and see what's up. Set up something for sure. Dan mentioned Edric 3-0 versus Archie Moore. KO'd Archie in the last one. That's saying something right there, right? That is saying something. And that's was I know that they fought when they were at middleweight too, right? If I'm not mistaken, this might have been at middleweight, or at least 2 of those, if not all 3, something like that. And then there was one that Burley couldn't beat. I think Burley couldn't get past Edric Charles himself, something to that tune. I got to look back on it. But that just shows you the level of these fighters right there and just having to fight each other multiple times there. But again, we got my man JamesJBraddock in the mix here. We're talking about him. Leo Lomsky, another great fighter. Pete Latzo, Ernie Schaff. Ernie Schaff, he was a great heavyweight contending during that period. He ended up dying in the aftermath of a contest with he had fought Max Baer. And when I say Primo, was it Primo Canera? The Ernie Schaff story. I'm trying to think of Ernie Schaff. Damn good fighter. I throw him in the likes of he's in there and around the same era as Johnny Risco right here. There's a book. I got to get that out there to you. Rodolfo Rivera Jr., the Cleveland Rubberman, Johnny Risco. But yeah, tough, rugged contender right there. But Ernie Schaff, he had fought Max Baer, lost to him, and then I think Primo Canera, and he had pneumonia or something, or he was sick at some point leading up to that, passed away. But he was a damn good fighter there, heavyweight there, Ernie Schaff, and someone who Braddock was in their mix with. Al Gaynor. Al Gaynor, if I'm not mistaken, was the last of the colored world heavyweight champions, but this was past the point in which Jack Johnson had already won the world title, but they kept it going for a good bit. But I believe he was the actual last one to hold that distinction. John Henry Lewis, as I mentioned, former world light heavyweight champion. I am working on something with him. I don't know how long it's going to take, but I'm working on something with John Henry Lewis. Of course, he's a family member or a family member in the lineage of John Henry Lewis is LL Cool J, who's now he's a rapper, but he now does a lot of shows and stuff. I think he's on NCIS or something like that. But he's from the family lineage of John Henry Lewis, one of the great light heavyweights, often not talked about. I'm going to do something on him at some point. I already have a thumbnail started at the very least. And I look forward to it because I think John Henry Lewis, he's going to be one that, hey, people really enjoy that story. And it just so happens John Henry Lewis is one of the wins that took Braddock over the top, who got him that shot at Max Baer. So this is in that sort of second stint for once his injury was healed and all of that stuff. JamesJBraddock, he fought John Henry Lewis. I think they had fought twice, but the second time he was able to beat John Henry Lewis, and then that led to another winner too. I think he beat Abe Feldman, and then he got a shot at Max Baer. So Max Baer, the Livermore Larriper, one of my favorite fighters right there, heavyweight, former world heavyweight champion. And of course, that's the basis of what they mean, kind of the Cinderella Man, because he was not expected to win this contest with Max Baer, who was truly a big-time puncher in the history of the heavyweight division, a true killer in the ring there. And they thought that he would absolutely destroy JamesJBraddock. Now, Max Baer, he was a jovial type of guy, and sometimes he would goof off at training and such. And there were questions as to the focus or his focus coming into it. What I will say is there was a situation where Baer had hurt his hand or something like that. I think it was wrist, arm, or whatever it might be in an exhibition. It was like a year prior, and it never quite healed properly. I think he had been out a year prior or close to it prior to this fight with Braddock. But there was something to do with his hand that is out there. It's in the Magnificent Max Baer book or something, but I don't know. That doesn't mean that it would have changed things if he fought that same type of fight with JamesJBraddock. But it was a fight where Braddock played it smart. He didn't sit to exchange with Max Baer and allow himself to be caught with anything big from Max Baer. And ultimately, Baer found himself posturing, doing more gesturing, and kind of just practically just walking around and or chasing Braddock for the duration of the fight. And ultimately, it was Braddock who came out on top and became the world heavyweight champion. And for Max Baer, of course, that was I believe that was his first defense, or it was going to be a second defense. I'm trying to think. It might have been his first defense, as a matter of fact, though. And that kind of stuck with Baer. That was sort of the pinnacle, the high point for him, and the high point for JamesJBraddock, as a matter of fact. And it would be, of course, we mentioned it, Joe Louis would be the one to dethrone Braddock, and that was going to be tough sledding either way you slice it there to go up against Joe Louis at any particular time while he was on the trajectory that he was on. So that was one that kind of dethroned him and derailed him right there. So Mr. G says, I have a friend whose sons were fighters whose favorite lightweight was Ike Williams. Oh, yeah, Ike, bad dude right there. No doubt about it. That's good stuff there, Mr. G. Yeah, Ike Williams. Tall, long, light heavy, and he could punch as well. Hell of a fighter there for sure. Hell of a fighter. Dan mentions Ike's was so great. No doubt about it. We have footage out there too. My friend is the father of the Balthazar brothers. Okay, awesome. Awesome. Good stuff there, Mr. G. Thanks for sharing there. Buddy, Mr. G in here in the mix right there, the Balthazar brothers. Okay. Good stuff indeed there. Dan mentions Edgar lost to Ken Overland. Overland was good. And then had a draw with him at middleweight. Overland was a great champion, as Josh has said in the past. But, oh, yes, no doubt about it. No doubt about it there. So, hey, tough night, tough eras, great fighters there. And these fighters, hey, they weren't coming in there to lie down. So, it could happen any given day right there. The great 80s Balthazar brothers, really 80s, some awesome fighters. I remember their father was, oh, yes, indeed, there, Dan. Indeed. So, yeah, but no, good stuff. Thanks for sharing that, folks. And so, yeah, Joe Louis, he was the one to dethrone JamesJBraddock. But, hey, at that particular time, would have been tough for anyone to get past Joe Louis. But big picture, at one point in the midst of that, kind of what I mentioned there, Braddock, he had to have government assistance. He was down to his last dollar penny. He was working on the docks as well. That's where he had started out when he was younger, working on the docks. Then he made a little money and all of that stuff. Then the stock market crashed. the Great Depression. It lost a lot of funding. I think he had like a taxi company he had invested in, some other things. Then, of course, he went broke and had to get government assistance, things of that nature. And then ultimately, he made this comeback. He rebounded, went through some tough stuff. He got a good deal of funding from that Joe Louis fight, so that elevated him. And of course, he was able to make somewhat of a recovery and put himself in position financially to do well post, that heavyweight championship reign there, which didn't last super long in itself there. But hey, we look back on it, and it is a story that I think stands out and resonates in boxing. So just look at it from that perspective, because even as the years have gone on, and if we're looking at when this fight happened, when did this fight happen? Was this 30? Bless you. Sorry, yeah, bless you. Let me see. When did this happen? Him and 37 with him and Joe Louis. So him and Max Baer was actually 1935. Thinking about that, 1935 is when that fight took place. That's insane, right? 1935, right? So he fought Joe Louis after that. Then Tommy Farr. And he had a win over Tommy Farr. Tommy Farr was a good little rugged fighter there for sure. Tommy wasn't bad. But that being said, just think about that, 1935, and it still stands the test of time as far as JamesJBraddock in that story, what he was able to accomplish there as the Cinderella Man. And you think about some of the upsets in heavyweight history, that's one of, if not the absolute biggest of them all right there when you really look at it. Here in recent times, when Andy Ruiz knocked out Anthony Joshua, that was a pretty big one for many people. But Andy was solid. But that being said, yeah, I'm trying to think as far as the major upsets. Yeah, that is definitely one right there. That's probably the biggest heavyweight wise. But you had some others that rival it. When Muhammad Ali, of course, Cassius Clay at the time defeated Sonny Liston. That was a huge upset. Not too many thought that he was going to win. I guess you could say Ali over Foreman upset in some sense right there, But the standard, at least there early on, was, of course, JamesJBraddock and his upset over Max Baer, the Livermore Larriper there. But Braddock, yeah, he would go on, as mentioned, to fight Louis and then Tommy Farr, call it a career. Hey, and the rest is history. But I think one of the shining, I guess you could say, glaring things or takeaways from the entirety of it is that even despite the sort of Cinderella Man banner or Cinderella Man moniker that is thrown upon him, if you take even that fight away with Baer or whatever it may be, if you look at it outside of just what he was able to do as a heavyweight, you'll see that he was still a pretty damn good fighter there, JamesJBraddock. A damn good fighter just from an overall perspective. Now, here my dog here just is like going to force me out of here. But JamesJBraddock, a fighter that, hey, history will continue to remember. We'll continue to talk about him just from an overall perspective. So I do want to, hey, give nods to him. Hey, and I appreciate everyone being here to join in on this as we talked about JamesJBraddock. That's good stuff there. Dan, met Jenny, and Herman. All right, gotcha. Mitchell, he says Barrow was essentially responsible for the death of two fighters, and after that, he was never the same fighter. Oh, yeah, certainly there, Mr. G. Even though, it's kind of iffy. So Frankie Campbell was one of them, of course. The other one, Frankie Campbell one, that was the unfortunate one right there. And Frankie, he was pretty much out there in the ring, but Shaft, he did fight Canera, but there was something. Bear was tied to him, but Bear, he was not this evil guy, or at least if that was the portrayal that was given off in Cinderella Man. But no, he's more of a jovial, fun-loving type of guy, and you can see that in some of the video that is out of him training, goofing off, messing around. But just unfortunate. Boxing, dangerous sport right there. But Frankie Campbell, Ernie Shaft are two that are tied to him. Said, yeah, tough sport there. Oh, Mr. G. Okay, filmed there in Toronto. Shout out. That's what's up there, Mr. G. Good stuff. Yeah, I love Toronto. Been there a few times. As a matter of fact, went to the little X-Men house there. One of the times I was up there, I know that was filmed, that house or whatever, where they filmed X-Men, the Marvel movies. I've been there. It was pretty cool. Pretty cool. They have little trap doors and all that stuff. Just think about a family having that huge place. It's amazing, actually. The good stuff, Toronto. Hey, that's the place to be right now. You never know. Might see me up there, Mr. G, at some point. Ernie Schaff, yeah, Ernie Schaff. He was in the mix there as well. Dan, yeah, Frankie Campbell, Camille, yeah, Frankie Campbell. Unfortunately, I know Bear donated funding to Frankie Campbell's. I think they did a benefit, or is this fight there after they donated the funding to him. He was really bent out of shape about it, but yeah. That was an unfortunate one, and he caught Campbell against the ropes in a situation where messed up back of his neck, spinal cord, or something of that nature. And of course, he died from those. I don't think he ever regained consciousness after going unconscious there in the ring. So unfortunate. We've heard some of those stories. What a great great group here on chat. Stellar historians, no doubt about it. There, Dan. I'm 100% in agreement. Man, this is always great. I appreciate everyone who always joins in and shows some love as we discuss these great fighters, and there will be more to come. It's rumored he killed others coming up. Hushed up, paid off family. Yeah, I don't know there, Dan. maybe. I don't know, but hopefully not. I wasn't upset when Douglas beat Tyson because I cashed in big time. Okay, got you there, Mr. G. Got you there. No, that's good stuff. Hey, 42-1. 42-1. Woo. That must have been a big one right there. So that's good stuff there. But man, no, I appreciate everyone. Hey, we've gone for about an hour, 16 there. But I know we had some kind of offspring comments and or kind of discussions into other historic boxers and all that stuff. But that's good because that gives us other topics that we can talk about. I'm going to think about what the next one is. If you have any suggestions, feel free to drop by, chat when we dialogue about it, all of that good stuff. But man, this is great right here. JamesJBraddock, the Cinderella Man. I'll bring up his stats, notable fights once again, just so you all can see there. Ended up with a record of 46 victories, 24 losses, 4 draws, 10 no decisions, 3 no contests, 26 knockouts. He could box. He could get you out of there when he needed to get you out of there. Make no mistake about it there. But JamesJBraddock, the Cinderella Man, one of the greats. Oh, yeah, and then the last little tidbit, from what I recall, they went with the use of James J because of the fact that we had some other James J's. You think about James J. Corbett, James J. Jeffries. Even Gene Tunney was at one point considered to have used the James J, but he ended up going with Gene, not to go with that James J moniker, but he's not. So we've had multiple James J's as heavyweight champions. Just think about that. That's pretty crazy right there, that last little tidbit right there. But JamesJBraddock, I'm sure we'll have more discussions on him here as time goes on. So I hope to catch everyone here in the mix of it. As you know, as we discuss some of these, Bear paid for Campbell's kids' education. No, that's a good thing right there. Yeah, Bear was a good dude there. It's unfortunate, these guys go in there and compete, guys and gals, and hey, wanting to come out safe there for our entertainment. But hey, this is a great sport, the sweet science, and it's good that we show love to these individuals after they are even gone, because they left a lot in the ring, the Braddocks of the world, etc. They left a ton in the ring there for us all. I know it well. I worked in broadcasting for 36 years. Okay, good stuff there, Mr. G. Hey, hope to catch you here the next one there, Mr. G. I'm going to set something up for what will be next Wednesday, folks. I hope you're here with, well, you know what, there's another show. Yeah, we'll probably still do it before this other show they're trying to do, talking about some modern boxing. So I'll let you know. But hey, in the meantime, hey, everyone, enjoy the rest of your night. We'll be back in the mix at some point here shortly. And thank you all. Let's keep boxing history alive, baby.